Wow. Okay, One Piece chapter 1087. I'm gonna go ahead and say it right now, man. I was already really interested in what we were getting with Aokiji and Garp, but just getting more of the backstory and kind of seeing how much further the connection between these two goes. This is really good storytelling, and it kind of makes you look back at what happened when Aokiji first met Luffy and basically let it be known like, hey, I know your grandfather. Like, it makes so much sense now as to why Aokiji was so much of a monster, as well as why he took the interest he did in Luffy when he was watching him. Because in this flashback that we get, we learned that Garp was like, man, I can't believe my son is a damn revolutionary, and now my grandson says that he's going to be a pirate. I'm not going to stand for anything like this. And one of the things Aokiji tells him is like, hey, I don't know what I have to do with this. Like, why are you telling me this information? And I like how that just kind of planted the seeds right there. They're like, hey, this is my grandson. Like, he's going to be out there. You can kind of see why, even though Aokiji saw Luffy as being a threat, Aokiji didn't use his full power and he fought against Luffy back on Long Ring Island. So I do like that right there. That actually puts a lot more into perspective, and it also kind of makes you look back at why he let Nico Robin go. It didn't necessarily just because of what happened at her island. I think some of what happened with Garp might have had something to do with that. So that being said, though, I like how the chapter opens up and it just gives you more of that foreshadowing where you see these huge just craters inside of these battleships. And one of the things that we get told is that these are battleship bags. And it's basically what Garp and Aokiji were doing. That was part of their training. They were just punching battleships. Like, whereas some people use punching bags, these dudes are so much of monsters that they're sitting there and they're punching whole ass battleships for fun. And when you first get this information, you go like, oh my God, like these guys are monsters. I can kind of understand Garp. Garp's this big burly gentleman and everything. He's a war hero. He fought against the Rocks Pirates. But when you look at Aokiji, like, you don't think, Aokiji's strong, but you don't think that he's got that much physical strength. Because when you look at the size of those craters, Aokiji's, it isn't necessarily that much smaller than Garp's. Obviously, Garp was stronger than Aokiji when those are being made, but it's one of those things where you could see the potential right there. And what I like here is that we get the information that this is the strength of heroes. It wasn't gifted at birth. And it kind of just shows you it's part of that whole theme of hard work, because it doesn't matter how talented you are. It doesn't matter if you're given head starts and gifts that other people don't have if you don't put in the work, because there's always somebody. Doesn't matter where they are. Doesn't matter how much further behind the finish line that they're starting or the starting line that they're starting behind you. If they work hard enough, they will catch you, especially if you yourself are slacking. So I like that we see that right there, because it's Oda telling us that we're about to see another gear out of Aokiji. If Aokiji ends up defeating Garp right here, I'm not going to be shocked. Like, I think that the signs are kind of pointing that when we eventually get back to what's going on, I know Garp is down at the end of the chapter, but when they eventually get back into another serious fight, I'm not going to be shocked if Aokiji ends up winning this one. So what I like here is that we then transition over where there's a drunken Spitfire and Garp is basically like, oh, wow, okay, that's kind of interesting. He pulls back two of the pirates that he's got and he uses them as a shield and he lets them get burned basically by the fire. You see all this super chaos going on and Garp looks completely unaffected by anything. This guy shoots out a fireball and he's not even affected. And what we see here is that they say, like, oh my God, how does he stand up against this many pirates without losing a step? This old man is crazy. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Garp right now is like in his 60s or 70s. So like the dude is really old, but he's kept himself in prime physical condition, or as close to prime physical condition as you could ever hope to be, just given his advanced age. So the next thing we see here is that Garp is letting everybody know, like, okay, the innocent, they've been taken over to the ship. We just got to deal with these pirates right now. And what I like is that you do see how some of the people that were saved were like, I hope Captain Kobe's okay. So you're starting to see like the seeds being planted that Kobe is eventually going to be the one that ends up taking over Garp's mantle and potentially even making it all the way up to Fleet Admiral at some point. But what I like here is that you also see how Garp is like, okay, like, our job is done. Let's go ahead and pull back. And one thing that he says is like, this place lives up to its reputation. There's no end of the pirates coming out of sight. And that shows a very smart and tactical move because Garp is somebody, we know that he's strong. He can probably mollywop every single one of these people on this island with the exception of Aokiji. That one would be a fight that requires a ton of effort on Garp's part. However, Garp realizes that right now, this is not the time for that battle. It's not time to directly engage with this many powerful people with all these unknown potential devil fruits. Let's pull back. The priority should be saving the citizens that are on that ship. And before Garp can get out of there, Aokiji steps up and says, like, I can't let you leave yet. And that lets you know that at the very least, Garp is going to have to buy time for everyone else to escape. And he's going to have to take down Aokiji. And so he gives the order. When I tell you to run, you guys run. You get over to the ship. Don't hesitate. And what I like here is that Garp has the right idea in mind, but we see the inexperience of Kobe, where Kobe hears someone say, oh my God, help me. And Kobe goes, wait a second, we didn't free all the captives. And Kobe ends up getting that inexperience taken advantage of. And it ends up with Garp stepping up in order to save him. And Garp ends up getting a sword right through his insides. And what I like about this is that despite being stabbed through the stomach, Garp is strong enough that he completely one-shot Shiryu in this moment. And Garp basically refers to him as being a small-time impaled down thug. And when Kobe tries to take some blame for it, Garp says like, hey, don't even flatter yourself. They weren't after you. You ain't even worth the skin on your back right now. They were after me. And we get the reveal that like Garp, he's got the same bounty as an admiral, which would basically be 3 billion berries. And it's one of those things where you can see all the dollar signs just lighting up in all these random thugs' eyes because they're going, I could make a name for myself. Like Garp is injured, you know, I'll be the guy that killed Garp. We might be the people that killed Garp. It's one of those things where they get too greedy and Aokiji has to basically check them and say, it doesn't matter if this dude got his arms and his legs tied up. You by yourself are not going to take down Garp. All of you guys stand down. And we see Garp and Aokiji charging towards each other, ready to fight. And that's when we get the flashback in. We see how Garp and Aokiji were training, and we see how Aokiji at the time is complaining about how much it actually hurts to actually punch the battleship. And what I like is that after we start getting into this, the flashback abruptly ends, and you have a moment where Aokiji tells him, like, hey, looks like you raised a formidable foe. And that's where Garp tells him, consider yourself expelled, you dunce. But what I like about that is that just before we see that where Garp is like, consider yourself expelled, we have a moment where Garp looks over at Aokiji and is telling him like, look, man, go ahead. Let's have some snacks. Get us some tea. It's one of those things where even though Aokiji outranks Garp, he'll never, ever look at him and say like, oh, okay, you know, this is my superior. In his eyes, he's still that protege that he has. He's still going to kind of talk to him a certain kind of way. He might respect him in public, but when it's just the two of them, he's still going to pull that rank. I'm your master. And what I like here is that when Aokiji and Garp are slamming fists together and both of them are actually using haki at this point, it creates this giant shockwave. And I like that it all goes back to what we saw at the beginning of the flashback where Garp is telling Aokiji, when you punch this battleship hull, do not use haki. And Aokiji says, I can't use it now. And now we see exactly like Garp had him go through all that extreme training. Because if he could do that much damage, if he and Garp could do, or if he and Aokiji could do that much damage with their fists on their own, when you add in haki, it's one of those things where it's going to make it even more insane. And so when Kobe sees that Garp has been taken down, he starts screaming out, and then that's when all of a sudden the pirate that has the owl fruit ends up revealing that they're not going to be able to get off of the island safe, and he's targeting the ship that Garp has that has all those civilians on it. And Pizarro basically says, when the newspaper is written tomorrow, it's going to talk about how the Marines came here and they're trying to rescue Kobe, the hero, and they ended up falling, and Vice Admiral Garp ended up falling in battle. And what I like here is that even despite all of this, Garp is looking over and he's still telling Kobe, do not panic, justice will still prevail. This was a really good moment. Again, I don't think that we're going to have Garp taken down like this. I don't think it's going to happen like this, but I do think at the end of the day, Oda's setting the stage for something big here. So that's me my chapter question, you guys. If Garp was fighting against Aokiji when Garp was in his prime, how well would Aokiji, the current version of Aokiji, do against prime Garp? Let me know down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.